Most Christian families are making a silent mistake inside their own homes. It's not a lack of faith. It's not a lack of prayer. It's something much simpler. And Pope Leo XIV pointed to it exactly. When you understand what he said, you will never look at the rooms of your home the same way again. And that is precisely what you are about to discover. There is something that separates a home that has faith from a home that lives faith. And that difference is not in the objects you hang on your walls, not in the books you keep on your shelves, not in the symbols you display for the world to see. The difference lies in something far more invisible and at the same time far more powerful. It lives in what happens inside each room of your home, in the conversations you have or choose to avoid, in the attitudes you embrace or refuse, in the words you speak when no one is watching. Pope Leo XIV, in one of his very first gatherings as Pope, met with Vatican employees and their families. It was May 24th, 2025. And in that meeting, he said something that sounds simple but carries enormous weight. He said that faith and prayer are like salt in food. They give flavor to life. Think about that for a moment. Salt on its own does nothing. It needs to enter the food. It needs to be mixed and absorbed, and it is only when it penetrates the meal that the transformation happens. Without salt, the food exists, but it is bland, lifeless, without taste. That is exactly how faith works inside a home. It can exist as a symbol, as a tradition, as a habit. But if it does not enter into attitudes, words, choices, and relationships, it transforms nothing. The home keeps existing. But it is bland, lifeless, without grace. And the question that remains is, where exactly does faith need to enter? In what moments? In what places? In what situations does it need to stop being decoration and start being real salt? Before we go any further, tell me in the comments, what city are you watching this from? I would love to know where this message is reaching you today. Scripture already gave us a clue about this. In Matthew 5, Jesus looked at his disciples and said, "You are the salt of the earth. But if salt loses its flavor, how shall it be seasoned?" He was not only speaking about people, he was describing how faith itself works. It needs to be active, present, penetrating the reality around it. A faith that does not enter daily life loses its flavor. A home where faith exists but does not act loses its grace. And it is from this understanding that we can look inside our own homes with different eyes, not to judge what is wrong, but to recognize where faith has not truly entered yet. Because when it does, when it really does, things begin to change. Not magically, not instantly, but in a real way, in a deep way, in a way that only those who have lived it can truly describe. The first place where this happens is the front door. It sounds almost too simple. But think about what happens in that moment when you arrive home after a long day. What do you bring with you? Not your bag, not your groceries. What is inside you in that moment? The stress of work, the anger from a conversation that did not go well, the worry about a bill that does not add up, the exhaustion that sits deep in your bones, the frustration of something that did not turn out the way you hoped. All of that walks through the door with you. And when it enters, it contaminates the atmosphere. It shapes the first words you speak, the tone you use with the people you love, the energy you bring into the space where your family lives. The front door is the first filter, and in most homes, that filter simply does not exist. Pope Leo XIV, in that same gathering on May 24th, spoke about how each person can be a builder of unity through their attitudes. And he was very specific. It begins in everyday situations, in the work environment, in daily relationships, overcoming misunderstandings with patience and humility, putting yourself in the other person's shoes, avoiding prejudice. He was speaking to Vatican employees, but he was describing exactly what happens inside a home the moment someone crosses the front door. If you have not subscribed to this channel yet, do it now. It is simple. It takes only a second, and it makes sure you never miss a message like this one. The front door can be a moment of spiritual transition. A moment where you consciously decide what you will carry inside and what you will leave behind. This is not a technique. It is not a ritual. It is a decision. It is an act of faith that says, inside this home, I will choose to be different from what the world made me today. This does not mean pretending everything is fine. It does not mean hiding what you feel. It means giving to God what you are carrying before distributing that weight to the people you love. It is what Scripture calls us to in 1 Peter chapter 5. Cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you. The front door can be the place where you do exactly that. A simple gesture, a breath, a 3-word prayer. Lord, I am home. And with that gesture, faith stops being a symbol on the wall and becomes real salt in real life. This channel exists because people like you believe this message needs to reach more families. If you would like to help us continue, please consider making a donation. Every amount, no matter how small, helps keep this mission alive. The donation link is in the first pinned comment below. The second place is the table or the kitchen. And here things go even deeper. There is something that happens around a table that does not happen anywhere else in the home. The table is the one place where people stop, where they sit facing one another, where they share something concrete, bread, food, time. And it is precisely because of this that the table has always been in every culture and in every era the sacred place of the family. On June 1st, 2025, Pope Leo XIV celebrated Mass for the Jubilee of Families in St. Peter's Square, before families gathered from nearly 120 countries. And in that homily, he said something that remains deeply powerful. In the family, faith is handed on together with life generation after generation. It is shared like food at the family table and like the love in our hearts. In this way, families become privileged places in which to encounter Jesus. Privileged places to encounter Jesus. Not the church building, not the monastery, not the spiritual retreat. Though all of these have their place, but the family table, the most common, most ordinary, most simple place that exists inside a home. And that brings a question no one likes to ask. What actually happens at your table? Not the food. What happens between the people? Is there conversation or the silence of phones? Is there gratitude or complaint? Is there listening or competition? Is there presence or the disguise of absence? The table is the place where faith can be passed on or where it can be silenced. Where a grandfather tells a story that plants a seed in a child who will carry it for decades. Where a father prays before the meal and teaches without words that there is something greater than all of us. Where a mother asks how the day went and truly listens. And in doing so, teaches that people matter more than tasks. Scripture reminds us of this in Luke 22, when Jesus, at the Last Supper, took the bread, broke it, and said, "Do this in memory of me." The act of sitting at the table, of breaking bread, of being truly present, has always been sacred. It has always been the place where something invisible happens, between people who love one another. There's a generation that no longer knows how to sit at a table without a screen in their hands. And this is not a judgment. It is a reality that Pope Leo XIV himself addressed directly on May 28, 2025, in a message to the Dicaster for Lay, Family, and Life. He spoke about families and the responsibility of transmitting faith to new generations. He warned about fathers and mothers, children and young people who find themselves at times alienated by lifestyles that leave no room for faith and whose spread is facilitated by the wrong use of social media. He was not condemning technology. He was pointing to something deeper, that when the wrong things occupy the center of family life, the right things get pushed to the edges. And the table is where you can see this most clearly, because the table is a choice. Every time you sit down together, you're choosing what matters. Every time you put the phone down, you're choosing presence over distraction. Every time you ask a question and wait for the real answer, you're choosing relationship over routine. Faith transmitted at the table does not need a sermon. It does not need a Bible study. It needs a father who gives thanks before eating. It needs a grandmother who mentions God naturally in the middle of a conversation, the way you mention someone you truly know. It needs a family that treats the meal as a moment, not a task to finish, before moving on to the next thing. This is what Pope Leo XIV meant when he said that families are privileged places to encounter Jesus, not because of what they do perfectly, but because of what they choose to do together day after day in the most ordinary moments of life. The third place is the living room, and this one is perhaps the most complicated because the living room is the most contested space in the entire home. It is where the television lives, where the remote control lives, where the couch pulls everyone in the same direction but often keeps them miles apart. It is the room where the family is most physically together and most spiritually absent at the same time. Pope Leo XIV, in his May 28th message, spoke with great clarity about the responsibility of the family to transmit faith, especially to new generations. And he identified something important, the privatization of faith. He said that an increasingly widespread privatization of faith often prevents people from knowing the richness and gifts of the church. Faith becomes a private thing, a personal thing, something that stays locked inside the individual and never reaches the people living in the same house. The living room is where this privatization happens most visibly. Everyone in their own world, everyone consuming their own content, everyone present in body but absent in spirit. And slowly, without anyone deciding it, faith gets pushed out of the common space, out of the conversations, out of the shared moments, out of the room where the family actually spends most of its time together. Scripture speaks to this with extraordinary precision. In Matthew chapter 6, Jesus said, "Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." What occupies the center of your living room is what occupies the center of your family's heart. This is not about removing the television or banning the phone. It is about asking an honest question. What gets the most attention in this room? What generates the most conversation? What does the family gather around? Because whatever that is what is shaping the next generation. Tell me in the comments, does any of this resonate with what you see in your own home? I read every single comment. Your answer truly matters to me. The living room can be reclaimed, not with a dramatic decision, but with small ones. A conversation that starts with, "Did you hear what the Pope said this week?" A moment where someone turns off the screen and asks, "How are you really doing?" A Sunday evening where the family watches something together and talks about it afterward. These are small things, but small. Things done consistently are how faith moves from being a private belief into becoming a shared life. And that leads us to the fourth place. And this one is the most intimate of all, the bedroom. This is the room where no one performs, where the masks come off, where the fears that seemed manageable during the day suddenly feel enormous in the dark, where couples face the distance that grew between them without either one knowing exactly when it started, where the tears that were held back all day finally come, where the prayers that feel too broken or too desperate to say out loud are whispered anyway, in the silence, sometimes without even words. The bedroom is the most honest room in the house, and it is often the loneliest. Pope Leo XIV spoke about this kind of silence. The silence where God seems absent, where prayer feels like it disappears into the ceiling, and where the answer we asked for never came the way we expected. In his general audience on September 17th, 2025, he reflected on the mystery of Holy Saturday, the day of great silence when Jesus lay in the tomb and everything seemed over. And he said something that speaks directly to every person who has ever prayed in the dark and heard nothing back. God is not afraid of the passing time because he is also the God of waiting. Every suspended time can become a time of grace if we offer it to God. God works in depth in the slow time of trust. Read that again slowly. God works in depth in the slow time of trust. That prayer you prayed 6 months ago that still has no answer, God has not forgotten it. That marriage that feels like it is held together by something invisible. God is in that invisible thing. That fear that visits you at 2 a.m. when the house is completely quiet. God is already there waiting, present in the silence that feels empty but is not. The bedroom is where faith becomes the most personal, where it stops being something you practice in public and becomes something you need in private. And it is precisely in that need, in that raw, unfiltered, desperate need, that faith does its deepest work. Scripture speaks to this place directly. In Matthew chapter 6, Jesus said, "When you pray, go into your room, close the door, and pray to your Father who is unseen. Then your Father, who sees what is done in secret, will reward you." The bedroom is not just where you sleep. It is where you meet God in the way that is only possible when everything else has been stripped away. If this channel has been a place of peace for you, please consider supporting us with a donation. It does not have to be much. What matters is that together we can keep this message alive and carry it to more families who need to hear it. The donation link is in the first pinned comment. And now we arrive at the fifth and final place. And in many ways, it is the one that holds all the others together, the prayer corner. It does not have to be a room. It does not have to be elaborate. It does not have to have candles or icons or a kneeler. It can be a chair by the window, corner of the bedroom, a small table with a Bible and nothing else. What makes it a prayer corner is not what is in it. It is what you bring to it and what you choose to do there consistently day after day. Pope Leo XIII's personal secretary, Father Edgar Ramuna, revealed something deeply moving about the way the Pope himself lives this. He said that Leo XIV, throughout his entire day, always seeks contact with God through silence and through prayer before the Blessed Sacrament in the chapel. A man who leads more than 1 billion Catholics around the world. And the foundation of his day is a fixed place where he goes to be with God. Not occasionally, not when he feels inspired. Every single day. This is not a coincidence. This is a pattern that runs through the entire history of the Church. Every man and woman who ever made a lasting difference in the world around them had this in common. A place where they stopped and listened and surrendered. Not because they had all the answers, but because they knew where to go when they did not. Think about what that means for a moment. The person leading the largest institution on earth, a man responsible for the spiritual care of over 1 billion people, navigating geopolitical tensions, internal church matters, global crisis, begins and sustains every single day from a fixed place of prayer. Not from a strategy meeting, not from a briefing, from silence, from prayer before the Blessed Sacrament, from a daily faithful, unremarkable act of returning to God before doing anything else. If the Pope needs that, if the most visible spiritual leader in the world needs a fixed place to return to God every day, what does that say about what you and I need inside our own homes? What does it say about the families that are trying to hold everything together without that anchor? What does it say about the marriages under pressure? The parents running on empty, the children growing up in homes where God is mentioned on Sundays but absent the rest of the week? The prayer corner is not a luxury for the spiritually advanced. It is a necessity for anyone who wants their faith to be something more than a belief they carry in their head. It is the place where faith becomes a practice, where it becomes embodied, habitual, real, where it stops depending on how you feel and starts depending on what you choose. And over time, over weeks and months of returning to that place, even when you feel nothing, Even when the words do not come, even when life is too loud and too heavy and too complicated, something shifts, not dramatically, but unmistakably. The person who prays consistently becomes a different kind of presence in the home. Calmer, more grounded, more patient, more capable of giving what others need because they are being filled from a source that does not run dry. Scripture gives us the most powerful image of this in Luke 22. Before the hardest night of his life, before the arrest, before the cross, Jesus went to a place. He went to the Mount of Olives, and he knelt down and prayed. The Son of God himself, in the moment of greatest pressure, greatest fear, greatest weight, went to a place and prayed. If he needed that, what does that tell us about what we need? The prayer corner is the place in your home that says, this is where we come back to. This is the anchor. This is the place where the noise of the day stops and the voice of God has room to be heard. It is the place where the salt, that faith and prayer that Pope Leo Barton spoke about on May 24th, 2025, gets renewed, where it does not run out, where you return to be filled again so you can bring flavor to every other room in the house. Because here's what happens when a home has a prayer corner that is actually used. The person who prays there in the morning crosses the front door differently in the evening. They carry less because they already gave something away. The family that prays together before the meal does not just share food at the table. They share something that cannot be eaten, but feeds everyone present. The parent who kneels in the living room in front of their children teaches more in that one moment than in 100 conversations about faith. The couple that prays together in the bedroom, even in the silence of a difficult season, keeps a thread between them that the world cannot cut. And the one who returns daily to the prayer corner, even when they feel nothing, even when the words do not come, even when God seems silent, that person is building something in the unseen that will eventually show in everything visible. This is what Pope Leo XIV meant when he said that faith is handed on together with life generation after generation, shared like food at the family table and like the love in our hearts. It is not handed on through perfect families. It is not handed on through families that never fight, never fail, never doubt. It is handed on through families that keep returning, that keep showing up, that keep choosing in small ways and large ways to let faith enter the room, every room. Now we come back to where we started. The salt. Salt does not transform food by being placed next to it. It does not work from a distance. It does not work through intention alone. It has to enter. It has to be mixed in. It has to become part of the food itself, inseparable and visible, and yet the difference between something bland and something full of life. Faith works exactly the same way inside a home. A cross on the wall does not protect a marriage. A Bible on the shelf does not heal a relationship. A childhood spent in church does not guarantee that a child will carry faith into adulthood. What makes the difference? What has always made the difference is whether faith entered the daily life, whether it walked through the front door with the person coming home, whether it sat at the table and shaped the conversation, whether it occupied the living room and influenced what the family gathered around, whether it was present in the bedroom in the darkest and most honest hours of the night, whether it had a fixed place in the home where it was renewed day after day in silence and in prayer. Pope Leo XIV did not give us a list of 5 rooms. What he gave us through his words, his homilies, his messages, and the way he himself lives is a vision of what faith looks like when it stops being a symbol and starts being a way of life, when it stops decorating the home and starts transforming it, when it becomes, in the truest sense of what he said, salt that gives flavor to everything it touches and the transformation that comes from that, the peace that settles in where there was anxiety, the patience that appears where there was frustration, the reconciliation that becomes possible where there was distance, the hope that returns where there was nothing left. That is what it looks like to watch God move. Not in a dramatic moment, not in a miracle that everyone can see, but in a home that is slowly, quietly becoming the kind of place where God feels welcome, where his presence is not just displayed, but inhabited, where faith is not just professed, but lived. You do not have to change everything today. You do not have to redesign your home or restructure your entire life. You only have to choose one place, one room, one moment. Start there. Start today. Because the salt only works when it enters. And every home, no matter what it looks like right now, has room for that. Maybe for you, it starts at the front door. Tonight, when you arrive home, pause for just a moment before you walk in. Take a breath. Say a quiet prayer. Decide what you are bringing inside and what you are leaving behind. That single decision repeated every evening will begin to change the atmosphere of your home in ways you will not be able to fully explain, but you will feel. Maybe it starts at the table. Tomorrow morning or at dinner tonight, put the phone face down. Ask one real question. Listen to the answer without thinking about what you're going to say next. Let the meal be a moment instead of a task. And if it feels strange at first, if the silence feels awkward, stay in it, because that is where the conversation that matters is waiting to begin. Maybe it starts in the living room, not by removing the television, not by banning screens, but by reclaiming 1 hour a week where the family gathers without them, where someone reads something aloud, where someone asks, "What was the best thing that happened to you this week?" Where the family remembers that they are not just people who live in the same house, they are people who belong to each other. Maybe it starts in the bedroom. Tonight, before you sleep, instead of scrolling through your phone until your eyes close, spend 5 minutes in prayer. Not a formal prayer, not a recited prayer, just honest words spoken quietly to a God who Pope Leo XIV himself described as one who does not occupy all space, who waits, who withdraws to leave us freedom, who trusts even when everything seems to be over. Tell him what you're afraid of. Tell him what you are grateful for. Tell him what you need. And then rest in the knowledge that he heard every word. Or maybe it starts with a prayer corner, a chair, a corner, a small space in your home that you designate as the place where you return to God, where you go not because you feel like it, but because you decided to, where faith stops being something you carry in your head and becomes something you practice with your body, kneeling, sitting, opening your hands, opening your heart, where the renewal happens that makes everything else possible. Pope Leo XIV said that faith and prayer give flavor to life, but flavor does not happen all at once. It happens gradually as the salt enters, as it dissolves, as it becomes part of everything around it. The same is true for a home. The transformation is not dramatic, it is quiet. It is slow. It is made of small decisions repeated over time until they become the character of the home itself. Until peace is not something you have to create, but something that lives there. Until forgiveness is not something you have to force, but something that flows more naturally. Until faith is not something you display on the walls, but something that shapes every conversation, every meal, every quiet moment before sleep. That is what it looks like to watch God move inside a home. Not a single miracle. 1,000 small ones accumulated over days and weeks and years in every room, in every moment where someone chose to let faith enter instead of leaving it at the door. This is the invitation. Not to be a perfect family, not to have a perfect home, but to be a family that keeps choosing in the ordinary moments of every ordinary day to let the salt in, to let faith do what only faith can do. Give flavor, give life, give meaning to everything it touches. If this message touched you in any way, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. A friend, a family member, someone going through a difficult season in their home. You never know what one video can do in someone's life at exactly the right moment. And if you found something here that was worth your time, leave a like. It helps this message reach more families who are quietly asking the same questions you were asking when you pressed play. This is the work we do here, week after week, message after message. And we do it because we believe that families who are rooted in faith are the foundation of everything good in this world. Families that pray together, families that eat together, families that choose in the small and ordinary moments of every day to let God into the room. That is not a small thing. That is everything. Thank you for being here. Thank you for trusting us with your time. Thank you for watching until the end. God bless you, your family, and every person who walks through the doors of your home. We will see you in the next one. And until then, choose one place. Just one. Start today. Open the door, sit at the table, turn off the screen, kneel in the dark, return to the corner, let the salt in, and watch what God does with a home that is finally ready to receive.